Welcome to Overthinking Episode 5, where we take fun, interesting ideas, overanalyze them, and run them to their logical conclusions, all in the name of exploration, education, and most importantly, entertainment.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Devin.
And we don't claim to be experts in any of the topics we discuss here today. We simply find these ideas interesting as we hash them out in real time. Get ready to join us on this exciting, fun, crazy ride to nowhere.
This week, we are trying to climb our way out of the Little Dipper.
It's
hard,
really
hectic,
cold. No oxygen.
But you know what? We have a great view. I can't see the Earth from here, but the stars are beautiful.
Oh yeah, we couldn't see the Earth, huh? We feel very alone right now.
We're way too far away.
And on the topic of we're no longer feeling alone, we have our first guest, don't we, Devin?
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting episode. It's very different. We have Dean Tracy on, no relation, and
that we know.
Fair. Dean is an amateur philosopher. I think that would be the way you'd want me to introduce you.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, all right. And he's just coming on the show today to talk to us about some fun thought experiment philosophy stuff, because that's what we do.
Yep.
Dean, what are you drinking today?
Today we have rum and Coke.
Ooh,
nice.
Okay.
Epic.
It's an inferior version, a Coke Zero. I ran out of the real stuff.
Oh, that's okay. We'll forgive you of this time. You know, on this podcast, we're all about, being forgiving of each other's shortcomings.
So, Dean, low key, that is my absolute favorite drink on the planet, rum and Coke.
Nice.
Really?
Like alcoholic or otherwise, that is it.
That's wow.
Yeah.
I would have seen you more as a, I don't know, distinguished champagne. I don't know.
I've never even tried champagne, so
What?
maybe that
Okay,
will be my
when I come
favorite.
over, we're toasting with champagne. That's the deal.
What are you drinking, Luke?
I have water. I'm doing a dry February. Yeah, it's a little, so I'm like, you know what, it's good. Practicing like a new intermittent fasting, and that basically means no alcohol involved, which is nice. It's actually been really nice. Saves money.
Just trying to
and
be
saves
super
my gut.
healthy.
Yeah, it
There you
is.
go.
Mm.
But
Nice.
let's get into our first topic. And Dean, actually, we could have prepped you on this. That would have been nice of us as hosts. But our first topic, we always like to warm up our philosophy brains with just small thoughts we've had this week in our segment we call Secrets Uncovered. And this is just a time for us to have little thoughts, talk about them, and basically just say, okay, that's interesting, and then move on to the real meat of things.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any small thoughts prepared, but maybe
fine.
one will come to mind on the fly.
Well, we can both go, and then if you have anything.
Yeah, if you have
Because
anything.
Luke did the same thing to me on our first episode,
Yeah,
and
even though
I just didn't do one.
Yeah, I know you didn't. That's okay. I can talk enough for 3. And so my Secrets Uncovered is actually it comes a little bit from the idea of purpose in life. And I'm someone who's very eclectic, and I do a lot of things. And then throughout this week in particular, I've realized the human need to really accomplish something purposeful in short intervals. And because I'm someone who I like to have big ideas and I like to think really big. And I've realized that is very detrimental to me on a mental and successful level, because if I'm not accomplishing that big goal, then I'm like, oh, wait, then I'm not moving anywhere. And so what I've done is I've really tried to focus on one project, and that's my focus. And then within that project, I'm setting myself goals within that. And it's actually it's been feeling really good. Like today's been like an awesome day. I accomplished a bunch yesterday. And by a bunch, I mean a bunch of small tasks. So I'm becoming a really big fan of doing my best to go against a little bit of my nature and focus on something and actually accomplish things.
Does it feel like it kind of puts
That's
you
awesome.
at peace?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because I can go to bed feeling like I actually did something and excited for
Yeah.
the next day where I can also do something again. So yeah, definitely.
You're getting compound interest on incremental improvement.
Yes, I love that. Okay, we're having you
Stole
on.
that, but-
We have a new co-host.
We have a new co-host. Welcome. I love that. I love the idea of compound interest. Thinking about it in the terms of your trajectory in life, rather than a monetary. Wow. That makes so much sense. I'm reeling from
Luke.
this, Devin. I need you to talk because I'm like.
That's the slight edge principle, Luke. You know that. Come on.
I?
You do. We've talked about it.
Do we?
Anyway,
I don't know.
I'll go.
Or the Matthew principle. Have you guys heard of the Matthew principle? I don't know much about it, but I've
I
heard
don't
it.
think so.
So I guess it comes from the Bible, and it's to those who have everything, more will be given. To those who have nothing, everything will be taken.
Oh. Yeah.
To those who have, more will be given. To those who do not have, even what they have will be taken.
Yeah.
It's probably.
Oh wow!
more
You
exact.
actually have
our scholar. Our
all
local
right, our local scholar, right? That's what Devin is.
Yeah, I guess economists use it, and it's supposed to represent the idea that you start moving forward, whatever advantages you get from moving forward, even small steps,
Right.
you're going to sort of get interest on that, or snowball in the right direction, kind of thing. But
The
of course,
rich
the
get richer,
danger is
the
it
poor get
works in the
poorer.
other way as well. You
Yep.
can snowball in the wrong direction.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I think
That's cool.
That's a nice way of putting words to a principle. I think a lot of people might intuitively see, but not actually put into practice.
Yeah.
Especially remembering to use the advantages that you achieve. If you achieve something, use that right away, and then gain more interest from that achievement instead of laying it to waste, and just letting it
Yeah.
sit there. That's interesting. Yeah, that's awesome. So far, this has probably been a more interesting episode than our last 4.
I thought I did good. I mean,
I'm kidding. I tend to always go back to just bashing the podcast and people who listen to it.
well, I mean, what kind
That's
of
a good
nerds listen to a
strategy,
podcast
you know.
like this?
It's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Set a low standard, and that way you can blow it out of the water every time.
See, Devin? Yeah, always be a pessimist. That way, if things actually work, then great, awesome.
I don't think that's what he said.
I love. Wait, what fallacy did I just use, Devin? Huh? We talked about fallacies a couple weeks ago.
That was basically a straw man.
See, there we go. We're learning about fallacies. That was my purpose, of course. That was what I was intentionally trying to do.
Luke
that.
messes up on purpose so I can call him out so that the audience can learn.
Always. It's totally not me just messing up and saying the wrong thing and then Devin going, "That's a fallacy. Why are you saying that?"
So, Luke, you and I already talked about my secrets uncovered this week. So I'm going to share it. It's new to Dean. It'll be new to our audience. Dean, are you familiar? Have you heard of Roger Bannister?
No, it does not ring a bell.
Okay. Roger Bannister was an athlete. He was a long-distance runner. And in 1954, he broke the world record for the fastest mile ever ran. Which, that on its own is pretty exciting, right? But the pivotal thing and the reason that he's remembered today is because he was the first person to do a mile in under 4 minutes. And for centuries leading up to this, we believed that the human body was not capable of running a 4-minute mile. And then he did it. And then by 1956, 2 years later, 37 other athletes did it. Which is showing that it was mental fixedness. The only reason we couldn't do it is because we believed we couldn't do it. So learning this, hearing this story, this week I've been reflecting on my own life and trying to figure out what are my 4-minute miles? Mm-hmm. What are the things that I'm not doing just because I think I can't do them?
Interesting.
And this happens. I think one of the best things about having a personal trainer is exactly this. Because I remember my personal trainer, who I ended up firing because he wasn't a great person, like on a moral level. He was trying to like sell me drugs all the time and stuff. I'm like, no, I don't want this.
Probably bad drugs then, huh?
Yeah.
If he's selling you good drugs, it'd be different.
Exactly. Yeah. The bad illegal kind of drugs. And so, but what he did was he pushed me past, I remember one time he's like, we're going to do something so intensive today, you're going to hate me. And he said, you can scream at me, you're going to cuss me out. He said, like, you do this and that's that's the state you're going to be in, right? And he pushed me through this, and for I think it was half an hour of just intensive, like the most intense exercise I've ever done. And I was going to give up halfway. Like if I was doing it on my own, I would have given up in like a few minutes. And simply because I had someone ordering me to do something, telling me it's not okay to quit. Like, you can't quit. Like, you're not allowed to quit right now. Which is like a tactic, in the army and in the military, which is why I've briefly considered joining the military several times, right? And that's a bad reason to do that, by the way. But, like, that's exactly what happens is that they, like, look, you're bound. When you're alone, you're bound by what's going on inside your head. When you have someone else telling you what to do, all that mental thinking no longer happens because you're not thinking about what I can do. You're being told to do something and you just do it without thinking about whether you can or not. So
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah. So I mean, that's right. So we're talking like the mental thing. That's like the biggest thing in my mind. So yeah, but the 4-minute mile, fascinating, right? It's a point in history that I believe changed a lot about how we understand a lot of different.
It's just such a great physical, like, case study to point to when talking about a mental phenomenon, right? Because we can talk about limiting beliefs all day, and it doesn't really mean nearly as much until we can say, look at how this actually affects us. Yeah. And we actually have a picture that we can draw at and be like, look, for hundreds of years we thought this wasn't possible. Then one person did it. Then everybody did it.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So I wonder if there's other factors there, like going on besides like his belief in himself.
Nope, that's it.
Like that. And like with a certain drug hitting the market at that point, in in terms of high-level athletes or whatnot.
Right.
Because I mean, didn't something similar happen with weightlifting, where all kinds of records were constantly being beaten? And
I wonder.
No. I mean, you studied this, didn't you?
Our resident fact checker here is Googling rapidly.
No, Dean, did you actually study this?
Of fact checkers. There's facts don't exist for all intents and purposes.
Right. Yeah. And it depends on where, especially, try to find a fact within 15 seconds.
Because then you have to fact check the fact checker.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
I'm gonna be the fact checker, and I'm just gonna say things that I like, and we're gonna go with those.
Go.
So
Devin's turning into
wrong
me.
because
What have I
that
done?
is relevant. The truth being attractive, I think, is actually relevant.
True.
To what the truth is.
Yeah. I think, or what we perceive as the truth.
So, Dean, did you think of anything? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but if you don't have anything, we'll just move on.
So I did realize that I did have some interesting ideas, but that's as far as I went.
Okay.
Honestly, that's fine. Yeah.
Can actually rain check later in the episode randomly. I'll think
we can come back to it.
Idea.
What we'll do is we'll
in
play
the
the sound
meantime-
effect again, and we'll go into it, and then we'll come right back out of it, and we'll go throughout the episode.
There you
That's
go.
all on me on the editing, so it's up to.
In the meantime, though, at this point, I'm giving you the show, Dean.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, I just want to immediately just bounce off of something Luke was talking about, because it sounded like he was like, one way of thinking about that personal trainer idea is he was actually exporting not just his mental thinking, but like exporting the labor of his mental will, and like instead of taking part of my brain having to say like, okay, keep going, you got this, and the other part listening. Now the whole thing can listen, right? And while my personal trainer is the one yelling, "You got this, keep going, you can't stop." You know what I mean? It's one way of thinking about kind of like what's going on there, right? Because as humans, we tend to have very specialized functions, and our brain has specialized functions as well. It's really interesting that we can sort of like we're like Lego pieces, and I can use you for one thing, and you know what I mean? You use me for another, and all kinds of different ways. Okay, but that being said, we should just jump into
let's do it.
Planned topic. We can go off topic, I suppose.
Oh, we will.
So I was thinking the topic today: religion, science, and their relationship. Okay. So the nature of both, right? What they play in our worldviews. Similarities they have, differences they have. So I guess first I wanted to kind of open the mic up to like, what is your guys' conceptions of both, like in terms of the most general features? Like, how do you conceive of a religion? What makes it a religion, right? Same thing with science. What makes something scientific?
Yeah. I mean, Devin, you probably have a real response to this. I have a Luke response.
I don't actually have a good response.
Oh, you don't? Okay, I'll go first then.
You give a Luke response, I'll give a Luke
response.
response, but it'll be my Luke response.
Okay. You're Devin's Luke response. Got it.
Yes.
So when it comes to religion, I was very religious for a long time. So I think looking at that, what I see, especially from the outside of that, it's a personal belief in something larger than yourself. And I almost want to leave it at that. realize that then includes belief in just like the goodness of humans, in like the belief that whatever belief that the world is getting worse or better. Like what? Go ahead.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because you said it's the personal belief in something bigger than yourself.
And I'm thinking of it something to add to that. Yeah.
I want to just add the feature of it's a shared personal belief. So one person believing in something doesn't make it a religion.
Okay.
A group of people believe.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, that's good.
So
yeah.
a shared personal belief in something bigger than themselves.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's a group. That's true. Because if it's just a personal belief, then that's your just personal belief, and that's the difference between belief and religion.
I suppose that's one way to do it. You can get more fine grained, right? If I have such specific beliefs, then I have a very particular religion that only I belong to. No, right.
Exactly.
No, but no, that would how we usually use the term. Yeah, I agree. It's groups of people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I think the difference, and then of course, I think with science, it's that science is just a process of how we know things. It's a process of testing the world around us to learn about the nature of reality. We were talking about what truth was. Was it last week or was it 2 weeks ago?
I don't think we got into what truth is.
Because remember you messaged me randomly, or like, what do you define truth as? And you just ghosted me. Yeah, remember that? Yeah.
Yes, that was great.
So we did talk about truth, and I was just kind of talking about like we basically get conclusions like truth is just the nature of reality, just what is real. Reality doesn't change based on how we perceive it. We could be blind and not see something. That doesn't mean it isn't true or real. So that's where I kind of go with science is that it's the testing of what is reality, what is truth, and kind of breaking it down to have the best the best viewpoint that we can possibly have as fallible human beings who have limited ability to actually perceive and experience the world around us.
So that's fun. I have a dramatically different perspective of science than
really?
you do.
I didn't. I thought that was just the normal. And by the way, that's not my definition. That's just from what I have gathered from the people who actually state what science is. So.
No, that is your definition. You just gave it off the spot. That's your belief of what science is.
I mean, I'm not saying I made it up. I'm not saying I'm making this up. Like that's what I just want to come from that point.
Right. Yeah, you're coming from the perspective that it's like kind of like this shared view of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would say any field of study that hinges on the scientific method is by definition science. But the reason why that's fundamentally different than your view is I don't think that the scientific method is apt at discovering truth at all.
Really?
I think it fundamentally fails.
I wonder why. Like, I think what it defines is though, like, what is truth though?
Well, actually, you and I have a very similar definition of truth.
Right, exactly. So basically, how does the scientific method then not discover reality? Or the truths about reality, or what reality is?
Actually, I kind of know your thoughts because we've talked about it before, Dean. Do you want to answer that question?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good question. So reality, like with the capital R, right? All of it.
Everything.
I would say one way it doesn't at least fully capture the truth is that it tends to focus on the empirical and only use inductive reasoning, right? So not that scientists can't use other forms of reasoning, right? But the scientific method, when we talk about that specifically, it tends to be inductive. And it tends to be testing physical things, right?
And for anyone who didn't listen to our last episodes, could you quickly define inductive reasoning? Just so everyone knows we're on the same page.
Leave a link in the show note back to that.
Okay, fine.
So, Devin, do you want to take that? You're actually our mathematician.
Yeah, just really quick. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to.
So deductive reasoning is you're going from these large ideas. We know this. You put it together, and you can deduce this third thing.
Right.
And inductive reasoning is establishing a pattern of like a regularity.
Exactly. That's it. That's good. Yeah, that's it. I just want to
clarify.
Devin.
Devin probably has a more precise definition that he's thinking of.
Deductive reasoning is where it's logically structured such that the conclusions follow by necessity from the premises. So that's easy to explain and not give an example, but I think examples make it clear. If I have the premise that all men are mortal, then I have the premise that Luke Maxwell is a man.
You didn't say Plato.
My
this time.
conclusion is Luke Maxwell is mortal.
Right.
If both of my premises are true, my conclusion is true by necessity.
Exactly.
That's deductive. Inductive reasoning is more like a statistical approach of looking at what has happened and then drawing a conclusion based on that as to what will happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. I wanted to clarify our terms, so that way anyone listening is not
Good on you.
confused about. Hey, that's why I said, hey, what do I do? I'm a podcast host. I'm a professional. I may not be a professional at philosophy, but I am a professional at doing this right here. So, sorry. Go ahead.
Really, you get paid to do this?
Yeah, actually, I've made a little bit of money. Not a lot.
Nice.
A little bit. So yeah,
makes you a pro.
Yep. So go
More
ahead.
than
Sorry.
I can say for philosophy. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, let's be honest. Does anyone get paid for philosophy? Sorry, go ahead.
The professor.
True, yeah. Go ahead, Dean. Sorry, if you remember, if you could to continue.
Oh, so let's see. We were talking about how the limits of science. Yeah, the limits of science, right? So, so one worry immediately, right, is that if the world has non-physical things in it, right, that aren't subject to physical experiments,
right.
Do we just throw those things out the window? Are they not important? Are there other avenues of reaching that knowledge? Right, that might be, and abstract objects, things like that, mathematical truths, all fall in that field as well. I think Devin agrees there. Of course,
I do.
The layman doesn't typically think of math as separate from science, right? But that's the strange thing about science is, well, in my opinion, it almost operates like a religion. So, I mean, in so many ways, right? I mean, they have followers. They have what I would call like the old-fashioned priest, right? Like, your priest is the priest. 200-300 years ago was the person who held knowledge, who held right. They determined the correct translation of scripture and what it meant and things like that.
They could read.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So I mean,
they could read Latin.
Well, yeah,
in a lot of functional ways. In a lot of functional ways, science and religion are very similar. They both, maybe Joseph Campbell. I'm thinking of his definition of mythology. Like, right, we all have a mythology in a sense that, not meaning it's false, right? Saying something is a myth in this technical term doesn't mean it's false. It means it's something like that which helps determine and define for us like the nature of our existence, where we came from, those important questions that all humans seem to be interested in throughout time, right? So, sorry, I got something to update.
So basically, so kind of like, no worries. But like the scientific method, so basically, kind of looping back into why the scientific method isn't like let's say what was it? I don't want to straw man you, Devin, again. What did you say? It wasn't the best tool we have to understand reality?
I said that I don't think that it's fundamentally capable at arriving at truths.
Okay, you went that far. Okay.
I did go that far. I don't know if I actually
I don't know if
that
I'd go
outright,
that far,
but that is what I said.
Yeah, I don't know if I go.
So I don't know if hard pressed. I don't think I'd defend that strongly, but that was the original statement.
Yeah, it's the Luke answer. You get emotional and say something strong, and then you retract and go, well, okay, I don't actually mean that, but like you understand what I was saying, right?
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Someone talk. Dean, go ahead.
Let's see how long we can have dead silence on the air.
That's the best thing to have.
So, Luke, just like Dean kind of hinted at some of them, but the scientific method isn't capable at determining whether or not we have consciousness. The scientific method isn't capable of determining whether or not morals are valuable. Yeah. It can't evaluate the truth value behind the statements I'm making right now. Well, the scientific method can't prove mathematics. It presupposes them. The scientific method cannot prove that the scientific method is a valuable method. Okay. Because that's circular reasoning.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think how I clarify my statement, and again, maybe backtrack a little, is I think it's one of the best tools we have. Because what it is that it follows the idea of let's observe, let's record, and let's see if those recordings are repeatable. And if they're repeatable, then okay, this is like let's investigate this more. Let's see what circumstances are influencing this. Let's see if we change the circumstance, how does that change the results? Like that is And that's, I think that's why I just see that as like, okay, it's a process that really anybody with the knowledge of how to actually properly do this can do, because it's a very all it relies in is to have that consciousness. So that's why I think it's one of the best ways to start. And I think we're fledgling, like as a race. I think we're as like the human race, we're just starting to understand the vast entire world around us. We haven't even visited other planets yet and seen.
We know nothing.
Exactly. And well, that's the tagline of this show, is that we're human, so therefore we're wrong. So yeah, so I think with that kind of caveat, I was like, it's one of the best ways to understand it. What I'm actually curious to say, if you believe, I mean, both Devin and Dean, I'm gonna probably say the wrong name at one point during this show. Roll with it. Is that, what do you think is a, maybe not necessarily a better way, but another way to actually understand reality? Is it philosophy? Is it nothing?
Absolutely, philosophy, logic.
Logic. Okay. Is there some example? Especially, I've talked to Devin a lot, and Devin and I talk a lot. So I'm really interested in Dean and like what your thoughts are on this, and maybe if you have something, do you follow the same kind of thought as that, philosophy and logic, or a better way of it?
Well, something like it. I think it's important to keep an open mind, and
Right.
I think that human reasoning is a big one, right?
Right, of course.
We can reason about all kinds of things that aren't physical things.
Yeah.
But also, strangely enough, personal experience is up there for me, which sounds just like, okay, what do you mean by that? But I mean, just trying to explain all of our personal experiences in life.
Okay.
Essentially kind of adds into the picture.
Yeah, and you're saying,
I do think.
And I'm sorry, I want to clarify that really quickly, because I know if anyone's listening, they're going to hear personal experience and go, "That's not like." Are you talking mostly about yourself and yourself coming to conclusions rather than convincing other people based on your personal experiences? Or are you talking like what? Like, can you define a little bit what you mean?
Not quite. I guess what I mean is, look, I have to take my own experiences as somehow more important than the reports of other people's experiences.
Okay, okay, I understand that. There we go.
And that's partly because, how do I put it? I think that the person, the I, is the ultimate authority on knowledge. What I mean by that is, like, most people tend to think of like, okay, how do we know when we know? Well, it has to be due to some objective method, like the scientific method. Now once enough experts agree on X, Y, and Z, then I can say I know it. But at the end of the day, you're still the person who has to vet that system. If I'm saying the scientific method is the way to truth, it's still me saying it, right? And so it's only as convincing as much as I convince myself. So if I've done enough research and I've been objective about it and I concluded that, then that's fine. But you still got to see it's still my conclusion. So I could also, maybe divine revelation is another one. I don't know, or whatever, reasoning or whatever.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I guess that's what I mean by personal experience.
Yeah, and I think to sum it, because I wanted to make sure that you weren't saying like, oh, I just have this like one experience, I feel something, and then automatically it's true for, I'm trying to make it true for everybody in the world. Like, I just wanted to caveat that and like make sure.
Oh, like, you don't want to overgeneralize.
Exactly,
that's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, sorry. I'm gonna. And by the way, so I tend, if I tend to, like, Devin, you guard me. I tend to want a clarification, especially for like stating things, especially about your beliefs, because I don't want you to come across as wrong. So
I think in any important conversation, the most important part is the definition of terms.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I'm not going to stop you from asking clarifiers.
I just trust Devin to just tell me to shut up.
I love, and so in academic philosophy, right, it's really important to define your terms and to be clear and precise as possible. But one interesting thing you run into regarding definitions, right, is that if you're dealing with a concept that is at the edge of our understanding, right, in other words, where we don't fully, no one quite agrees on how it comes about, or there's different theories, then the resolution of your definition that can actually hurt you. So if your definition is zoomed in with more detail than your actual understanding, right, then what we're getting is basically bad information, because we're being too specific in our definition when we don't have the justification for being that specific. So I mean,
Okay.
in my conversations about God, for example, I think of God, I say God broadly defined, in most of my, like, when I'm talking about it, because to me, I do think it's a concept that has multiple parts, and just because one part changes a little bit doesn't mean like, oh, that's not God anymore. Now, he's whatever. He slightly changed the definition of all powerful or something like that, and therefore that's not God. No, the concept stays the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so in philosophy, right, when you learn new information about a concept you already have, like for example, when we learned that there's H2O in water, we just update our definition, right? We don't change the word. We don't say, okay, new concept entirely. You know what I mean?
Right.
No, you just updated your definition. But on the other hand, if we were wrong enough about a concept, like when they moved from the theory of ether to space, you know what I mean? So we decided, okay, we're wrong enough. We actually do need an entire new concept. We're not just updating our definition.
Right. Or about the nature of the solar system and how it operates and things like that, We're like, okay, we need to actually change all of our concepts to this new information.
So when I'm defining something, often it's a placeholder. It's like, here's how I'm conceiving of it. It might be slightly different in reality, and we'd have to update that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's like, here's my best conception of it.
That's actually a really good thing to say, and something that we probably should have said at the beginning of the first episode too, is that we can only define things to the best of our knowledge. And if people have a problem with definitions, they're like, okay, well, do you think like our definitions are completely wrong? Like, I'm calling this a phone. Well, here it is. I watch a phone. Like, or do you think that I'm merely saying, oh, it's a watch and you meant, oh no, but it's actually a wristwatch because you could have a pocket watch too. Like, I think that's like a difference of saying like maybe it might be a little different. You might see it a little differently, but that doesn't actually change it's not a big enough deal to actually change what we're talking about.
So a conversation tactic that I've always used is, you use a word. I'm not sure about the way you're using it, regardless of what I think of the word. Yeah. I ask you to define it. I use your definition for the remainder of the conversation.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just less friction, and most of the time, the definition of a word isn't as important as the concept that word's trying to represent.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Usually.
People say it all the time about atheists. When people say atheists, like, well, do you mean that you believe that there is no God, or are you unconvinced there's a God, or do you are you not even like searching for that? Or, like, do you are you open to either? Like what does that actually mean? Because people use that word very liberally. So like that's the biggest example I've seen of that definition of just being like, okay, fine. We'll go with we'll just talk about what word you're using right now, and if we need to, we'll update our terms.
Generally speaking, in that conversation, that's how I start.
Yeah.
And then by the end, after the conversation's gotten some traction, I go, by the way, it might behoove you to know that the popular definition of this word is.
Exactly. It depends on if you're having a deep conversation with someone, it's important to know. But if you're just you're just talking and passing with someone, you're like, okay, it doesn't even matter. Like it literally. It doesn't change the conversation, but that's a long segue. I don't want to stop you from you're talking about personal. You're talking about we're talking about personal revelation. We stopped there. You continued on for a little bit, and we stopped there about terms and things like that. So to get back on track, do you remember completing your thought or?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's go back to how we're conceiving and defining of science, right?
Okay,
so we talked about the scientific method. I think that is a very charitable sense of how one would define science, right? It's like what it actually is in theory. But then, when you look in practice, first off, there's all kinds of fields that call themselves scientific fields, right?
Yeah.
So political science, the Department of Political Science didn't used to be called political science, right? Mm-hmm. So all these fields trying to make this claim to some kind of scientific status. And so one of the things that's interesting about science, right, is that the word can mean different things depending upon the context. Of course, all words are like that, but I mean, this particular actually is all over the place, in my opinion. It's not just used to refer to the scientific method, but actually this was hinted at when you first answered, Luke, which is that kind of whatever method gets us to the truth. You know what I mean? That's often how people use the term. It's like, well, it's almost like science has won that psychological war, and now people use it to mean like, you know, whatever gives us actual evidence to believe.
Right. Or our close understanding of the truth, I should say. That's like, I don't think that science will tell us this is the nature of reality. I'm like, well, like that's our best understanding, or that's our viewpoint of nature of reality right now.
Right. I'm not. I didn't mean within it like certainty or anything like that necessarily. But yeah, science is often kind of this catch-all. But when you look at the different fields, they actually use different methodologies, right? And they use all different kinds of things. You know, there's lots of reasoning going on, obviously, in political science, for example. It's not just focused on the empirical. Anyhow, we were talking about philosophy as being another route to knowledge. And philosophy obviously uses human reasoning, logic, thought experiments. One of the interesting things about thought experiments, in my opinion, is that they're actually very similar to physical experiments in a sense that in the abstract, they have the same variables in play, right? So in a physical experiment, you're trying to isolate variables. You're trying to have a control variable, right? You're trying to have the thing that varies, the thing that doesn't. You're trying to keep track of all the causal connections. Well, it turns out in thought experiments, if you're doing them correctly, it's also true, right? That you're basically, you want to have a clean thought experiment that doesn't have variables that aren't supposed to be considered, right? And oftentimes the subjects do the thought experiments incorrectly, and they consider things that aren't supposed to be considered. So in a sense, they're you know, the experiment is failing, right? We're having other causal hits that we're not looking for.
Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. So let's see. There is a thought experiment called, actually there's many variations of it, right? But the experience machine, right? Thomas Nagel writes about the experience machine. Hope I'm remembering that correctly. But the thought experiment is basically like, hey, if there was this machine that you could design your life, right? And kind of just step into the machine and live that life, but you'd be leaving, you know, you're leaving your friends and family behind. Would you do it, right? And the thought experiment is designed to test, are there things that matter besides actual experience? You know, in other words, if you can design an ecstatic, perfect life, design heaven for yourself, is that all that matters, or is there more that matters besides like the pleasure or whatever, you know, that you get from experience?
Okay, well, answer time. Devin, I already know my answer. Do you have, like, what do you think about that?
Well, he was bringing this up to give a point of how this experiment is misused.
Oh, wait, do you want to continue? Do you want to continue on that then?
Sure. So often, so I've done a research project on this thought experiment, right? And you ask the students, after giving their answer to the experiment, you ask them, well, why? Why is that your answer, right? And some of the students will appeal to things that they weren't supposed to be able to appeal to in the description, the parameters of the thought experiment, right? So, for example, if they're like, oh, I wouldn't want to leave all my family behind, and I would worry that they would still have a crappy life and things like that. So you modify the experiment because you're not supposed to have them concerned about that, right? So you say, okay, just assume they could go with you or something like that. So that's one way of getting rid of that factor. But that's the kind of thing that can happen in a thought experiment, is that they're like for another example is like the trolley case, right? Famous one. If you're having to decide between 1 and 5 lives, and a common theme, students will raise their hand and say, well, what if, you know, one guy's Hitler and the other 5 are Mother Teresa? And it's like, when we say abstract from that, what we're saying is, you know, that we don't want that to be a factor. Therefore, when you're envisioning the thought experiment, envision them all as the relatively same kind of people, you know, same value or whatever in your mind, not horrible, not perfect, you know, whatever.
Right. We did the trolley problem 2 or 3 weeks ago, or 2 episodes. Our second episode was I introduced the trolley problem, and I'm glad I started with it just being nondescript people. And then I was curious though, especially with Devin. I'm always testing him. I'm like, okay, well, what if there was somebody in there? Like, how would that change? And of course, like, And of course, it changes everything, and it becomes less empirical and becomes more personal, which of course is what I wanted anyway. I wanted to get some personal emotion out of Devin. Which
Do you think you achieved that?
I think I did. By the end.
Okay.
I think by the end, because I had to push you to the point of where I said, okay, it's a loved one versus someone else. And you're like, okay, of course I choose the loved one. I'm like, well, duh, of course.
But I also caveated that with, like, if I know the person, I'm probably choosing that person because I know their intrinsic
Yeah, exactly.
value.
So you also came from a mathematical value, which was annoying to me because I wanted to get some emotion out of you. It's a common thing with my friends. I'm just trying to constantly get emotion out of them.
Yeah. You know, a common thought that I had during the trolley problem was, you know, what are other people going to think if I choose A versus B? What is the law going to think? You know what I mean? And that's not supposed to affect your intuition either, because then you have a circular reasoning, right, where you're letting society determine your morals instead of the abstract reasoning determine the ideal, and then you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
It's actually very difficult, and this is part of some of the skepticism I think towards philosophy. It is very difficult to get a good thought experiment with good data going because it requires that each person not only kind of understand it fully, but a level of intellectual sincerity, right? Which, you know, it's actually not super easy to kind of like reflect and trying to be completely sincere.
Maybe we should rename our show to like failed thought experiments.
Failed thought experiments.
Because I don't think we're hitting.
I mean, if we're taking philosophy like to the utmost seriousness, then we wouldn't have a podcast in the first place. We've made mistakes in the episode and we're like, wait, that's kind of weird. And then afterwards I'll be like editing and I'll be like, that's fun. I think we made a fallacy there. But that's not the point of the show. The point of the show is to have fun.
I've never made a fallacy in public.
I'm sure that is a fallacy of not knowing every detail of your life. But so that's good. That's interesting. So if you want to have fun with a thought experiment, you can add all those features in because who cares? But if you actually want to have a discussion around, well, okay, let's take this thought experiment and let's actually talk about it, then we want to eliminate those different, what would you say, like, what are some like points to eliminate? Like, is it personal bias?
So where it depends on the specific thought experiment, what you're trying to isolate. But yeah, you're certainly... In a way, funny enough, you're not trying to eliminate personal bias. In a way, you're trying to isolate it and force itself to rear its ugly head, right? Because what we're doing is we're trying to, discover something about ourselves that we don't already know, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to think, what do I actually think if this happens? Do I think this is right or this is wrong? You know what I mean? You're judging your intuitions there. Some people don't like the word intuitions, right? But in philosophy, what we mean by an intuition is like something like a judgment that I have, but I don't have access to the reasoning or data for why I made that judgment. Okay. So it's like a raw, like, you see an animal, you see a cat getting tortured and you just have this gut reaction like that's bad. You know what I mean? You don't have like you don't necessarily have this reasoning process in your head. It's like, okay, he's taking 17, on a scale of 1 to 100, he's at a 17 pain, and that this is more than whatever. So yeah, one question is like, why think the human mind in general would have access to any kind of level of truth via intuition, right? Mm-hmm. And it turns out, well, the brain is this awesome thing that has all kinds of data and it collects data, and you have a subconscious, and you know what I mean? Like, for example, when someone throws a baseball at me, I'm not doing the calculations, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
My head just moves out of the way.
Or it doesn't.
Yeah, or it doesn't. and so we tend to be able to project, for example, you could fantasize about how you would react if your crush came up to you and said this. And it turns out if you're good at fantasizing, you could actually get an accurate depiction of what would happen if you know yourself well and you know your crush well and you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not far-fetched to kind of think like what would happen kind of projecting forward. That's kind of
that's actually interesting because I never thought about thought experiments in the term of intuition. I always thought about it as more of like a logical thing, and that makes sense. Like, it makes total sense because every person's going to give a different answer for different reasons in different ways, and by that own definition, that's not you don't have like a big like logical answer, as it varies from person to person.
Right, right. And of course, but it is super interesting when we get huge like
Well, it is, of
similarities
course.
in
Yeah,
results.
of course,
That's what we try to base our arguments on,
Right, and that tells us a bit about
utilitarian. Yeah.
That tells. I mean, I think that also tells us a little more about like sociology, right? Too. Like that's where that comes into play. Is that helps us understand people in general? If I'm using those words right? Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. It's like, I mean, I guess that.
I mean, none of us are sociologists. So.
No, I mean, I have experience in psychology is one of my fields of semi-expertises, mostly from practical knowledge rather than education knowledge. Most of it, 80-20 rule, right? So that's really interesting. With that, I'm very curious. I mean, I know you have a bunch of notes. So like, but in there, do you have a thought experiment for us to run through?
Oh, good question. Let's see. I didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, if you have one off the top of your head, or if you just want to discuss, what you like. You have like.
Maybe let's see. I'm kind of veering away from the topic, so maybe let's go into. If it's okay with you?
Yeah.
If I jump right into.
We gave you the show.
You're in charge of the show right now.
Yeah.
We're just the humble hosts.
We're along for the ride.
Yeah, we're along for the ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does science require faith?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay.
I think.
Go for it.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, okay, fine. I spoke first. I'll take it. That was probably a mistake on my part. But now that I think about it, I am stuck with this. So I think the definition of faith would, I mean, when I think of faith, it's that it's something that you can't necessarily prove, but you still believe. Correct? Do you hold to that position of definition of faith? Or what do you mean by?
Yeah, I conceive of it kind of like that. I think faith or trust are kind of interchangeable here. When you have trust in, I guess.
I think cause trust is
you could trust something experience. Because it's trustworthy, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess. Yeah, faith would more like be. Dang, you got me there. Because what I don't mean is blind faith necessarily.
Right, and I assume that you didn't. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt there.
But faith definitely does have a certain amount of trust without evidence. Yeah, right. Yeah. Trust without evidence or justification.
It's kind of like would you liken it to taking a leap? Like you have enough belief. If you're standing at a cliff and there's a layer of fog there, you have enough evidence and belief to actually that there is water like 5 feet below it that you can safely jump into. And you're like, okay, I know enough about the geology of this place, of what people said, to actually take that leap. And technically, that would be a literal leap of faith because you're not 100% positive that it's safe, but you have enough to convince you to take that leap.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting way of thinking about it too, because what you're saying is like you're convinced of it in one way, right? Maybe mentally or like in your head, you think you have all the evidence. But in another way, here's the actual physical landscape, and I do not see the water, so I'm having to take the jump. That leap. But some type of trust without all the evidence.
Okay, and maybe to make it even clearer, to say like there's enough reward down there, like there's enough reason to jump, that it overrides the small percentage that I could be wrong. Like to say like there's a chest of gold at the bottom of that river. Like I was like, okay, the results greatly outweigh the risk involved.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't thinking about adding value into the mix, but it works.
I think typically when we discuss faith, usually it comes to the faith, of an afterlife. I think a lot of times because that's something that we can't, or of a God or of an afterlife, because I think most people use faith to associate with that. Am I wrong? Yeah,
definitely faith in God. Yeah,
right. Exactly. That's typically. I mean, that's usually how it's used, right? At least from most of the people I use. So
what do you think? Does science require faith?
That's interesting. I think that the process of science doesn't require faith. I think that the actual result that science gives us, I guess technically based on my definition I just gave, would require faith, because you would say, I'm trying to think of a good explanation, or a good real world result. Devin, help me if you have one.
With a real world result?
No, sorry, a real world example of something I would take on, like, technically speaking, faith by my definition that science has produced. So like let's say there's studies. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, here's actually an interesting one. So I know someone, not well, they're like family friend, who claim that two people. I know two people that claim they have electrosensitivity. They say that if they're around anything electrical, anything that emits any kind of frequency, that they have an allergic reaction to it, right? And it's not an uncommon thing for people to claim. I know of studies that have tested people that claim these things, and they've all been proven wrong. So by my thing, I would say, by when I'm talking to these people, I could say, based on the evidence I've seen, I do not believe you. I understand you may have this, so like I take it. So, but it's contradicted by someone who I know, who have no reason to disbelieve, who say that they have these experiences. So I could say that I have faith in science that they are wrong, and so I think that's like one of the best interesting examples I can come up with. Because I feel bad. Like, obviously, I would never openly, like, when I'm talking to these people, I'd never been like, yeah, you're wrong and you have a problem.
They
and you
know
need
what
help.
you believe now.
Well, they don't. Okay, okay. Also, they can't
That
listen
wasn't
to
answering the
electrical.
question. You didn't answer the question, Luke. You said you had a faith in one of scientific a result of a scientific.
Yeah, I would say result.
thing, but that's not. So you think science doesn't require faith then?
I don't. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, because I don't see how you can have faith in a process.
Well, yeah. If you think the process gives you reliable results, then you have faith in the process.
Yeah. Well, that's why.
Well,
maybe am I being needlessly and correct me, definitely correct me if I'm being needlessly wordy with this. Is I think in my perspective, it'd be more accurate to say I have faith in the results, because saying I have faith in the process doesn't really mean anything. Like, you can't have having faith in a process doesn't mean anything, because I guess then you could say then you have faith in the results as well.
Can I chime in on
this?
this?
I guess I'm tripping over myself a little bit.
So, I think it's absolutely appropriate to say that we have faith in a process and we have faith in result. But I think, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the question you wanted to ask was, does the belief in science require faith?
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. We're not quite hitting the right.
Okay. Yeah. That.
But I take it, you basically think science is a good method, and therefore you don't need faith. You have evidence.
But that's a show of your strength of faith in the process.
Right. Well, exactly. Yeah. I think.
I want to make sure. Not necessarily, right? If he thinks he doesn't need faith to back up, like a common reaction, right? When I think Dawkins' response to this question, do you have faith in science? Is, he's like, well, it works, or something like that. It works. And so he points to technology in a sense, or he points to the material results, right?
Yeah. A lot of times it doesn't work, though. So.
But yeah, that's another thing. It works.
That's why I would never. That's why I'm being very careful about not giving a blanket statement. I think my problem with understanding this question is that, for me, the procedure of science, even from what we learned, when we're in third grade, right? We learn about forming a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, forming a theory, right? That kind of thing. To me, it just seems very a very logical approach to finding information, is that saying, I think this is true. Let's look out into reality and see if it is. Okay, by our best estimations, this is the result. Either it's not true, it's partially true, or something else or it is true.
Yeah. So it sounds like basically the scientific process is contained within reasoning such that you don't need faith.
Well, it's kind of like having faith in inductive reasoning. That's kind of like what I'm thinking, because that's kind of like we just talked about how the process is a bit inductive. So I guess if you could say you have faith in inductive reasoning, then I'd have to say, I guess I have faith in the scientific process.
So there's some fundamental things that we can't prove, right? This is actually I think Hume, right? The problem of induction is that we can't prove that we can't prove that the universe is regular. We have to assume it's regular. But anyhow, it has regular.
Right.
I'm actually interested in if you want to expand upon that. If you're not able, that's fine. That's fine.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
So because we're not using deduction, right? We're just plotting data points, and it's all statistics. At how many points are you convinced that the pattern won't change after we've?
Right. Okay.
Let's say we've watched the universe for 1,000 years, and we say, here's the pattern. It's never changed from this pattern. There's still nothing showing that it's impossible that the pattern won't change tomorrow.
Right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean? So that's kind of like the problem of induction in terms of you can never get certainty with it is the problem of induction.
Yeah,
right?
of course, because the pattern, because it could be like if 1 in 100 times or 1 in 100 days something changes or something's different, and if we only live 100 days, and we haven't hit that one yet.
Right.
Then that I think as I'm trying to create like a simple approach to that, just kind of put it in my mind.
Yeah. So I mean. This whole does science require faith? I think is kind of let's get more specific. I mean, faith. The problem with the term faith and belief is they're kind of all or nothing, right? So I either believe something or don't. I either have faith in something or don't. But what we really mean, right, is like, look, how confident am I in a particular belief? It has a magnitude, right? And when my confidence passes a certain magical point called the credence value, then that's supposed to be justified for me to say I believe it, right? But the point is that there's a magnitude here. And so, I think it's fair to point out that although faith does play a role in a lot of religious lives, it also, you have to have a certain amount of faith in the things that we can't prove that we assume in science, right? Like particular methods, or the method. And a huge one to me is just the literacy of recognizing the boundary of science. Like screw not undermining its foundations or anything like that. Just like a lot of people don't recognize the boundaries of science, and therefore they don't recognize the value of other methodologies.
Of course,
that's a huge one. But so sorry if I'm all over the place.
No. This is all very. I'm really interested in this.
I want both of your answers, Devin and Luke, on this thought experiment. So this was, let's see, as an undergrad, this was Cohen's class. This was really good. He's an awesome professor, Professor Cohen. So, okay, you're a scientist, right? Or there's a group of scientists, and they're trying to build a machine that determines whether someone's in pain or not. Okay. So they put someone, they're building a machine. They put someone in the machine. How does science go about doing that? Well, they'll look at the brain waves, right? They'll record every physical thing they can about the person, and they'll ask the person, "Are you in pain? Yes or no?" And they'll tell them, right? Okay, well, they keep doing that thousands of times, tens of thousands of times. They get lots of good data, right? And it turns out when people are in this particular physical pattern state, whatever, referring to neurons in their brains, whatever, then they report being in pain. And when they're not in these particular set of states, they report not being in pain. Okay. So now they've done this, over years. They've quote unquote perfected the method, right? So now you're in a lot of pain. You step in the machine. Machine says you're not in pain. Who do you believe?
Oh. Okay. I've been talking first this entire time. Devin, do you want to take the first stab at this?
I have a very simple answer, but I think my answer is more, I understand your point. Obviously, I stepped in the machine. I know I'm in pain. Why would I believe it? The more interesting part of this is the scientist who helped you into the machine no longer believes you.
Yep.
Well, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that like? So you just say like your answer is in that you just know you're in pain.
I know I'm in pain. Why would I believe a machine over my personal experience?
Yeah, I have a history of not trusting my mind. But so like the problem is that it's a feeling. Like feelings is personal to you, and correctly please stop me if I'm breaking I'm breaking the thought experiment in ways that we discussed earlier. So please stop me if I'm doing that. Because my thought with this is that pain is it transcends from the physical to the mental. So
Yep.
it's actual physical receptors sending signals to our brain, which then is interpreted by our consciousness, us. It's experience. Sorry, I should say it's experienced by our consciousness. And in that case, I would say that I personally, if I was in that state, I would go, okay, there's something else wrong with me. And I'll say, okay, so like this says I'm not in pain, that means something else is broken. There's a problem with my consciousness.
But keep in mind, part of the stipulation is that you have the feeling of pain.
Right.
Right. You have the feeling of pain, and so you're saying because a scientist told you that you're not in pain, you think you're in a slightly different state that's similar to pain or something like that. Is that what
Can
you're
we
saying?
localize this?
Okay.
Let's say you have a knife sticking out of your thigh.
Well, what?
The machine says you're not in pain.
Oh, that actually does ruin the thought experiment.
Yeah.
a
See.
little bit.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
see it.
here's the idea. I mean, because if there's not an apparent physical cause of the pain, okay, we haven't done the second phase of the thought experiment yet, which is
Okay.
why the second phase was essentially what you hinted at, Devin.
Okay.
Now you're the scientist, and someone else is telling you, "No, man, I'm really in pain," but the machine says I'm not. Who do you believe?
So
right?
actually, so if I've actually I've thought in the 15 seconds I have actually thought about this. It's interesting. Thank you, David. I appreciate that.
Proud of you, Luke.
Yay for Luke thinking for once, instead of just giving his gut reaction, which was the first one. That was my gut reaction. I'm wondering because I guess the term pain is very general to me because I've experienced a lot of mental pain in my life. And that's not a firing of neurons. Like that's not like that is purely something in your mind. Like sure, you could say there might be something mental going on. We're still trying to learn what it is. So I would say I don't understand neurology enough to give that definition. But as far as I know, is that we're very limited currently into. Wait, no. Let me phrase. I'm tripping over myself again. I would say that would be something that would be. That I would say that then I would believe myself. If it was something, if I'm experiencing because this has happened, like I've been, in the hospital and they say, "Are you in pain?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there's something like going on," and they take me for my word because they trust me, unless of course they think I'm like whatever. But if I'm in a state of mental pain and then they say, "No, you're not in pain," I would go, "No, I know I'm in pain." And this is something that you might not be able to test for because it involves the consciousness, which is immaterial.
Right, exactly. So you're hitting on the point there, which is all of our answers are going to be yes, right? Pain broadly defined, because within conscious experience, there's no distinction between appearance and reality. Mm-hmm. So in other words, being in pain and having the illusion of pain collapses into the same thing. It's impossible to have the illusion of pain by definition, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you think you're in pain, you're actually in pain. Right. See? Notice that if you're the scientist on the outside and someone said, the machine has supposedly been working properly for a long time. Right. You have all this data, right? There's only two explanations. Either the machine, the machine needs to be calibrated further. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is a very specific case of pain that it's never seen before. Or the person's lying. Right. But when you're the person, the lying part is not an option. You felt the pain.
Exactly. Oh, I see. Yeah.
So that the machine has to be calibrated further. Mm-hmm. But notice this: you're calibrating an objective thing, a machine, based off of subjective experiences. It can never capture the reality of it more so. This is why they say consciousness is fundamental, right? You can never sort of like, how do I put it? when it comes to matters of consciousness, in other words, science has to rely on the subjective inputs of the.
Right.
They have no choice but to rely on the thought experiments. That what gives the actual data.
Yeah.
In other words,
Mm-hmm.
like when you're dealing with paint, for
Right.
example.
And that makes a lot more that I think that clarifies a lot of what we were talking about earlier about having faith in science. Is that by the nature of reality, there is nothing objective. There is only, like, what we can see, what we can observe is subjective for each circumstance and place. Whereas when we're dealing with something immaterial like numbers, they can't be subjective because it doesn't actually exist, right? It's an abstract thought.
Whoa.
Well, I mean, okay. I was a bit strong. I was a bit strong on there.
Abstract
definitely
objects
exists.
definitely exist. They just don't have a different.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sorry. I meant by.
You meant they're not material.
Exactly.
Which
Sorry.
shows that you're a materialist.
What do you? Okay. Whatever. No, I was talking about misrepresenting, and now I feel attacked. Sure. Okay. I misspoke. I looped that up. Okay. I'll admit.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Devin.
So the reason why I say shots fired, right, is that I think consciousness is a large aspect of reality that science is not very good, or possibly they have a very limited role, I would say, a very limited role to play in discovering the nature of consciousness and its implications, et cetera, because of the kind of thing consciousness is, right?
Right. Exactly.
But that doesn't mean the question is devalued, and that's unfortunately what a lot of science does. And I think this, again, why I call it a religion, and a lot of people call it scientism, right, as a religion, is because it defends itself like a lot of religions do, right? Instinctively defend themselves against criticisms and things like that. So, like, you ever notice that, like, in science, you're never wrong, in a sense that if you got it wrong, whenever science used to think it operated some way, and now they say, oh, but through the scientific method, we discovered that's wrong. And, now we have this new information. It's like, okay, so does religion have that mechanism, that backflip mechanism where they can take a failure and make people see it as a success? Right? No, instead, it seems to me, anyhow, I have the impression that anytime religion changes its mind, it's seen as a failure. It's like, oh, of course they had to update their theories because now there's evolution, or of course they had to update their theories because of that. But, I'd like to point out both religion and science have ways of updating themselves. And, some of the ways are rational, some of the ways are irrational. But when we're going back to defining religion and science, I noticed both of you use content-based descriptions, definitions, instead of process-based. So, like, a process-based definition, right, would be like the science, like religion is religion because they believe knowledge is achieved through divine revelation or something like that, or a dogmatic belief in a particular particular book being the word of God, and that's their method of attaining knowledge, or something like that. So you point to the method, right, instead of the sort of content of what they're studying. But definitely both play a role, right? We have a sense that definitely religions have to do with afterlife or God and things like that.
Right.
Okay. I'm kind of bouncing off the walls
here.
here.
No, that's interesting. I think a couple
I'm
things.
kind of going in a million directions.
Yeah, no, and that is very interesting. I've heard some of the things, but not phrased in that way. I think an interesting point. I think for me at least, the difference, and like talking about like faith in science versus faith in religion. I think the difference between the two is that most religion, and again, we're being very broad about religion, like belief, right? Most will claim a truth versus science saying we're trying to find at least our best understanding of the truth, and we're not there yet. I think that's the big difference for me. And so I think that's why and also, and I'm not saying like I believe this or anything, but I think that's generally why if a religion changes, why it's criticized, because it's seen as, or it presented itself as, the truth, and depending on whatever, like I'm not, there isn't any details to actually debate, right? And I'm not trying to get into that at all. But I think that's generally, I think that's the big difference for me in that perception, is that it's the difference between saying you have truth and saying that, okay, we're going to find our best understanding of that truth.
Right. So
I think the scientific method has a truth claim in it.
Really?
The scientific method's truth claim is one that I already said it can't prove.
Wait, which
that
one?
The scientific method is the most appropriate use
I think it's
to finding truth.
Well, I think it's the best tool that we have. I think that's the difference. Is that
No, I think that's scientific. That's the scientific method's truth claim, is that this is the best tool. And that's what they're defending.
Yeah.
And when it's shown to be misused and wrong, Dean's pointed out that it has a natural defense system built in.
Right.
So there is a truth claim, and it's actually stronger than a religion's truth claim in that you can neither prove nor disprove it ever. Like, I'm a Christian.
Right.
If I want to show you definitively that Christ is God, I have to prove that Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
Yeah.
If you want to show me definitively that Jesus Christ is not God, prove that he didn't.
Right.
The scientific method has this cool circular reasoning defense of you cannot prove that I am wrong. Period.
It is interesting.
And anything
This is
that gets
something-
close
yeah, and this,
is dismissed by science, culturally. Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
was-
that seems to be the
I,
case.
I
Like,
would say that I'm not against, and I will say that for anyone else, I'm not against any, like, all of us are pals here, like, but yeah, I think it is interesting. I would definitely need to understand more things to actually have this discussion. I'm not equipped. I will say that
yeah,
outright.
you are. Yeah, you are.
Okay. Or maybe off air.
So like, let me
Tracy's
let me
stamp of
bounce
approval.
back
Yeah,
and
but I
defend
think,
science a little bit. Let me bounce back and defend Luke. Like,
Well,
like,
I'm not,
so-
and I'm
Alright,
not
I'll be the
siding.
hater.
I'm not on one side, by the way. I'm not.
no.
I'm not the defender of science over here.
So
I
yeah,
want to make
that's
that
an
clear.
interesting thing is I don't consider myself an enemy of science, right?
Yeah.
But culturally, the way it operates, and as a religion, I guess I have criticisms of science.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. I think
But,
anything is worthy of criticism, and
Yeah.
I think that's just the nature of us being humans. Is that whatever we develop, whatever we have, whatever processes that we create, we're fallible. So therefore, I don't think we can ever create something that we can say is infallible.
Right.
So that's why I'm not saying like I believe in science and all that stuff, and that it's like, and that it is the perfect, like, not at all. Like, I think that everything, and that's why, that's one thing, honestly, that what makes me an optimist is that we are so fallible, but that's a great thing because we can always start working. Like, that's the nature of reality, accept it, and now we can improve as a species over time. And, I think that's a beautiful thing to see, is that to see us improving over time.
Definitely.
And correcting our fallacies, as we go to the best of our ability. And that's why I stay away from, making certain claims of doing this and that, because I'm like, you know what? I'm a fallible human being. I make mistakes. I've made mistakes during this episode. And so that's why I love philosophy too, is because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never heard philosophy.
You're human. You are wrong.
I love that. I love that so much. That was an accident. Like, that came by an accident, and I love that that's become our thing. Is there any claims that, because philosophy doesn't make any claims, right?
Well, so it's a very
That's it.
general field, right? So
Exactly.
what's interesting about philosophy is it tends to be where most fields tend to be defined by their content. Like, what do you study? Like, I study history. I study this. It's the content, right? Philosophy, the content's so broad that it ends up getting defined by its methodology. So which is a methodology that's reflective, right? So for example, it can argue with itself and change its mind. In other words, it doesn't have a set methodology. The methodologies themselves are up for debate. Now, of course, over time, empirically, I can describe what the methodologies are in terms of like human reasoning, logic, etc.
Right.
But when you get in the details, philosophers are arguing about all the details all the time, right?
Yeah,
about what is correct reasoning, what is correct logic, etc. But
one of the things that fascinated me about philosophy, that Dean, you and I had this conversation once, is that most fields of study, and to my belief, my understanding at the time was all fields of study, start with axiomatic truths. They start with things that they agree are true, that they cannot prove. They call those their axioms, and they build on them. And philosophy, there's a big part of philosophy, correct me if I'm wrong, that's developing any axioms that we think we might have and then picking at them and determining the validity behind them. And so philosophy doesn't actually have axiomatic truths in the same way that any scientific field of study does. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate. Yeah. So if you look in and correct me if I'm wrong, Devin, but right, if you're looking at axioms in math, there's like agreed upon axioms, right? There's just like, here's the axioms that help us establish that addition is possible or whatever.
Right. Unprovable, agreed upon truths.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how a mathematician defines an axiom.
So although philosophy deals in axioms, right, you might be studying various axioms for whatever reason, the field itself doesn't have any agreed upon axioms that sort of, now, of course, philosophers are highfalutin and they like to argue about this as well. So there's
of course,
in the subfield called first philosophy is a bunch of arguments for why this particular philosophy should be considered first philosophy. And then, of course, when I say first philosophy, you're probably thinking chronologically first. No, that's not what they're thinking. They're thinking of like logically first, like as in like, here's why this should be the foundation of all philosophy. Here's why my philosophy is really the foundation of all philosophy. Right. So sometimes the epistemologists, will make this claim that it's really epistemology. Knowledge has to be our foundation. And then metaphysics will say, no, obviously we study the nature of reality. We have to be first. Like,
yeah. And that's why I love philosophy, is because like it is a place to be like, okay, let's think about these things, let's debate them, and we're not gonna try to come to a claim that we're like, this is the truth. We're trying to best understand, like what philosophy is, which like you said is kind of almost everything.
Yeah,
it's so broad.
It's very broad. It's very broad.
It's just very.
But I will say we are trying to find truths, and many of us do claim to have found some. But in philosophy, the problems are bigger than their solutions, right? In other words, you tend to be dealing with problems that even if you find what you think is a solution, you don't have a way of proving it in such a way that you're going to convince everyone. So in other words, they tend to be long-standing problems that are not very easily solvable. Yeah. But they're still valuable is the thing. They're still valuable because they help us learn about the possibilities for their solution, about the barriers to knowing certainty about the solution, right? They often reveal parts about yourself. And, of course, I have my convictions in terms of philosophical convictions that I can't just, quote unquote, prove to anyone. But that doesn't mean I'm not fairly confident in them.
Right,
and
exactly.
Enhance my life and,
exactly.
Might change the way I view the world, everything like that. So let me jump back real quick to science as
and I also want to be respectful of your time as well, because we're running up towards the episode, so I just want to respect your time. So I don't want to keep you for too long. So if
I'm good to go. So if you need to give me a 5-minute warning or whatever.
Okay. No, you're good. You're good. You're good to keep going. I just didn't want you to think that you're held captive here.
No, you are held captive. We have to
I know.
finish
We're held captive by you. So you let us go.
I don't know if you guys knew this, but I actually had an ulterior motive today. My goal is that we figure everything out before we let Dean go.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, I'll need to use the bathroom before that happens.
Real low resolution. Very general statements about reality. Okay. No.
But yeah, sorry.
I think, therefore, I am.
There we go. Hang up. We're done. Everything's solved. The world is perfect. Sorry.
So Luke, I noticed like when you're characterizing science and the scientific method, it's kind of in a humble way that like it can update itself. It can recognize its own mistakes, right?
Right.
And I can see that. I can see that being the case in a sense, but in my experience, right? Like, so going back to the definition between religion and science, right?
Right.
A lot of people think of religion as dogmatic, and science is not dogmatic, right? So, but in my experience, what we should be focused on is dogmatic people versus non-dogmatic.
Exactly.
People, right? Because you can become a scientist and be completely convinced of your views and not listen to anything else.
Yep. And then find all the data
that agrees in any particular religion.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. That's why I don't believe most studies in pop culture, because it's just people finding things that they want to find in data and manipulating data. Like, so that's why that is one thing.
Coffee both causes and cures cancer.
Right.
So
Yeah, no. So does red wine. A glass of red wine can make you younger. Like I just, that kind of stuff. I'm just like, obviously, I don't believe that without doing a lot of research, and I don't care enough to do that research. But no, I think that's kind of what I was getting at too. That I didn't quite get there was that's exactly the kind of thing that I don't like is someone who says they believe something and then basically just who that belief it filters everything so that way they can't really see, they can't use, let's say the scientific method appropriately because they're warping everything to their would it be appropriate to say their axiom? I've never used that
worldview,
before.
their ideology. Yeah.
Right. So like an example, Luke, would probably be a Christian who doesn't believe in evolution and refuses to look at the evidence for evolution.
And if they see it, they're like, no, I don't want to look.
Bible says that's not how it works.
Exactly. I'm going to turn over here. I'm going to look somewhere else. Totally. I think that's the fundamental breakdown of growth. And thought. I think that's like going back because I'm always
if we aren't willing to challenge assumptions,
right?
We can't.
Well, and that's
grow,
why. And
right?
again, that's why I love philosophy is because that's what that's what it is. Like it's okay. Let's challenge and.
Question
of course,
everything.
other fields do that, but it is questioning. It's the question of well, why? Well, let's break it down. Like, is that process logical? Is that what's fueling that the first thing that goes to that conclusion? Your premise that goes to that conclusion. Like that's why I love it is because there isn't room for some like if someone comes in with a preconceived notion, then it's very at least for me to see it. It's very easy to see and go. Well, obviously, like the nature of philosophy is that you can't come to a reasonable conclusion if you're warping through your lens, right?
Right.
Am I saying anything?
Like
Am I saying anything?
You want to definitely stay as objective as possible. Yeah. But you know what? This is one of my criticisms of science, at least in practice, at least as it's actually being played out in our culture, right? Is that, in my opinion, like when I was a TA, right, at UC San Diego, both as a TA and as a writing instructor, I noticed, and this is going to be a generalization, but the students who were in the sciences, who were in the STEM fields, they were very arrogant about what they knew, right?
Yeah.
And anything that wasn't that had to definitely be proven. So it's like, I think there's a sense in which, there's a little bit too much confidence in science, both in practice and in not understanding its theoretical foundations and its limits, right? But then there's just like, they have this sense of, we figured everything out, that there's just very little details left in physics. All the big questions have been answered. And having studied philosophy for most of my life, I'm like at the opposite spectrum, right? I'm like studying philosophy has made me question everything, right? And we don't know crap, basically, is my conclusion.
Yeah, nothing's been answered.
And the things that have been answered are almost trivial, mundane stuff, like the empirical stuff. Like, are you kidding? If we actually limit science to the empirical stuff, a computer can do it, right? Gather data, okay, whatever. Gather the data, But in terms of the actual reasoning, which to me is the big part, the critical thinking, the reasoning, which some scientists do have, but they're not notice that science in general is not known for specializing in critical thinking or reasoning or anything like that. Or, they're not used to justifying their own foundations. So in a sense, modern scientists are even way worse than scientists were 300-400 years ago. At least they had a sense of their foundations, right? Now it's like the way these students are taught, I feel, is like, here's what we know. And then they're taught that way for maybe like at least the 4 years of undergrad, unless they get some really good professors. Then when you get at the high level, even of the sciences, right? Then they're taught, actually, there's all these unsolved issues and there's debates about how to solve them and blah, blah, blah. But how it should be going, and I'm thinking at least high school, maybe earlier, is you stop lying to the next generation. You stop lying to people and saying, here's what we know. It should always be framed the following, right? Here's what we think we know. Here's why we think we know it. Because then, you don't have to do that transition to adulthood, so to speak, when you get to the graduate level and you realize, oh crap, actually, apparently we don't know anything. And maybe that's a simplification.
Yeah, well, no, and I think, well, I mean, I've spent a lot of time talking with. I work in mental health and deal with teens. So I say deal with teens. I mean, I talk to a lot of teenagers at the school level, in person, over email. Right. One thing they're always constantly talking about is the failure of the school system. Instead of just telling them, is actually saying, okay, let's learn this. Right, there's this subject, right? Let's talk about this. Let's learn this. That's the number one complaint that I get is from teens when talking about their mental health struggles is the school system and how it fails them. I think that's generally. I think looking at it from a marketing perspective, looking at analytics and out in the world and observing, is that the most arrogant, the loudest the most arrogant people, and the most divisive people are the loudest.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yep. And also, what is it? Like they say, 10%, it only takes a 10% of an extreme view to pull the rest of the people, on that side with them. I forget. I don't have a source for that. I forget. I did read it in an actual scientific something. I forget where it was, but so it's I think that's honestly when I see when it comes to discussion and thought and, discovering truth. And we're talking about we've talked about this entire time, at the very beginning, truth is that it's turned into an us versus them, and we're the smart ones and they're the dumb ones.
Right, exactly.
Right?
And there needs to be more of a conversation,
right.
Occurring.
Everyone thinks that they're the best person, and that the other person is the worst person, and if everyone thinks,
well, Luke, you are the best person.
Well, I know that. Obviously, I know that. No one else will realize that, though. So see, I'm not, I don't think any of us are immune to that. And it's very interesting for me to actually study, to learn about ancient humans and about the formation of us versus them as a survival technique, and how it's trickled down to be so detrimental to us as a way of thinking, and even experiments with babies and talking about if you show a baby a toy that you're playing with and you give it to them, they'll be more likely to like you, or I'm paraphrasing the experiment. It was much longer, more intensive than that. But, even in young babies, I think they did 9 months and then 2 years, you could see an effect of us versus them in them, even if it's slight, even if it's, it's a small percentage. It gets higher as they get older. So that's kind of when it comes to, and again, right, I'm going to say this over the entire run of this podcast, is that I love philosophy because it is separate from a lot of these things. It's not... it shouldn't be, at least, and I'm right and you're wrong. It's that here's the idea, let's discuss different viewpoints of it. Let's do our best to come to a conclusion based on our premises that lead to these conclusions. So that's why,
Can't I do both? Can't I say that I'm right and you're wrong? So let's look at these reasons and draw the same.
You can say anything you want. I don't.
I think that was my goal of this podcast. I kid.
One of the interesting things about the relationship between philosophy and science is that they used to be the same thing, right? So science was just called natural philosophy or naturalistic philosophy, right? And one interesting question is why and how did they separate to be known to diverge? And I assume there's multiple reasons, but go ahead, Devin.
I have
Devin's
an answer.
raising his hand very wildly. Yes, you in the front. You over there.
I have a solid answer. Philosophy is the love of knowledge. Knowledge is dangerous. Scientific advancement, human advancement. Let's avoid knowledge.
I was not
at the very least, let's avoid giving knowledge to everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's very interesting. And also, I want to put this out there, is that I'm very curious about other cultures around the world and how they view the difference of philosophy and science. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I'm wondering, I see this as very much, and again, this is from my perspective in being, in America and seeing this, is that pop culture and science, and you have someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is the most smug, annoying person in the world, who has that, right? Who has that notion, and even Bill Nye's new show.
He's gonna sue us now.
Yeah, because he's totally gonna hear this. Even and Bill Nye's show is that it's the whole idea is I'm right and you're wrong. And I find that just so annoying and presumptuous to be like, you're a fallible human being just like me. You're not right. Like, just by definition of fallible is that everything you're talking about, guess what? You're not. And like, something may be more true, maybe closer to truth than others, but it doesn't mean that what you're saying and what you're defining is truth. And that's just something that annoys me so much. And people go on TV and say that and dismiss everybody else who has a different viewpoint.
Anybody with a lab coat gets to say whatever they want,
Right.
and it's taken as gospel by our
Yeah.
culture.
Have you ever seen any kind of like thief show or like leverage, like heist shows? Is that like, have you seen how many times they put on a doctor's coat and then immediately just get to breeze through? I mean, of course, that's a show. It's not real. But I've always loved that about putting on a uniform and then immediately by that uniform being perceived as the expert in what you're saying is more right than anybody else.
Yeah.
And being able to just like,
I hate that.
no, well, I don't.
And
When I say I love it, I mean it's hilarious to me that we're here like as a culture. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So that's also one of my main issues with science nowadays, and this actually goes a little broader than science, right? In a sense that we seem to be, and I want to get your guys' input on this as well, just as an empirical observation. We seem to be more reliant on authority figures and experts than ever before in human history.
Oh yeah, well, because
more and more people are not thinking for themselves, right? Like, for example, you hear people get shamed for like Googling medical advice instead of going to a doctor, for example.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I'm not on board with that. I'm really not on board with that. The more I look into things myself, if it's important to you, then you should look into it yourself at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
You
not
really
trying
should
to
take
dismiss
all the information.
authority and
Yeah,
as best you can. And obviously some things are complex,
Right.
but I think we definitely need some soul searching as individuals, like, and I mean everyone, like in this society, right? Because I think one of my interests in philosophy is that, look, it deals with issues of right or wrong, of ultimate value, how you should live your life. Science does not deal with those issues. Science is incapable because that's a non-empirical question, right? How one should live one life is not a matter. You can't measure something and get the answer to that. So
I'll be right. You and Devin talk. I'm actually interested in seeing how this turns out. You and Devin talk. I'm going to be right back. Just a second.
Yeah, sounds good.
Bye.
So yeah,
I don't really
I mean, where was I? Shoot, sorry, lost it there. But
you made a really big statement, and I don't know if I fully agree with it. That you said that we are more dependent on like the opinion of experts than any other time in human history. Was that it?
Yeah. Basically, we become more specialized, right? Hyper specialized as we've become successful, and so we have more experts, and more experts typically means you're expected to use them, essentially, right? And which of course isn't bad all entirely, but the problem is we're used to having experts run our lives, and we essentially can't do that when it comes to certain things of important questions, right? Of how we should live our life, what we should value in life, what's important, things like that. So,
well, those are funny ones because the counterexample that I had in my head was actually like the Middle Ages with the Roman Catholic Church, right? But at that point, the only expert that we actually listened to was on the things you're saying right now. How should we live our lives? And
right. Oh, and that didn't go too well either, right?
No.
Yeah. So
well, I mean, it lasted for a long time.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I guess I tend to think libertarian type view in terms of like everyone should do as much soul searching as they should when it comes to important questions,
right?
In life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And science doesn't. I don't get that vibe from science. I mean, in part because well, it's a whole nother field, right? But like whether or not science allows objective values at all is one question we might tackle. Right.
I just realized I was muted.
I knew you were muted.
I was just like, yeah. I wasn't saying anything important. I mean, it's interesting. I think one thing that everyone can do, has the ability to do, is to live their best life possible. I think that's one thing that regardless of what truth they find, like whatever it is. I think everyone can see the effects they have on others, and that's the one thing, universal thing I think everyone can agree on, is that, right? And not maybe not, and there's complexity, of course, in discipline. It's technically hurting someone, but it's for their good, that kind of thing. Jeez, I just saw your hand come up. I'm like, whoa, a bit strong, Devin. But yeah, I think, and like you're talking about, that libertarian view of, do the best you can. You're the only person who knows you. And who you are and how you think and how you perceive things, and no one can teach you how you perceive things. So you need to take the information out there and perceive it in the best way possible. Mm-hmm. That kind of, right?
Yeah. Riffing off of that, I'll have my random thought for the day to go back to that segment.
Hey, ready? What's up? Secrets uncovered.
Secrets uncovered. Okay, so this one I'm stealing. I like to steal. I steal good ideas all the time.
Right.
Is the idea that the point of adulthood, the specific point of adulthood, when you go from an adolescent to an adult, is when you realize that no one knows how to lead your life better than you.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be both a comforting and terrifying realization, right? That your father doesn't, your mother doesn't know what you should do with your life better than you do.
Right.
Point of adulthood.
It's interesting.
It is. Well, yeah, it is. And I assume for a parent, are you a parent by chance, Dean?
Am I a parent?
Yeah, a parent.
Parent. Oh, okay. I thought you were asking if I was a bird, like a parent.
No.
Yeah.
That's
Father of
insulting.
three.
Okay, father of three. Okay, so
Yeah.
so I think you would understand way better than Devin and I the flip side of that perspective, though, in the holding back. And in the holding back of being like, okay, I can't control you, even though I want you to live the best life possible. I'm just going to do my best to impart what I have and give you the foundation so that way you can, live your best life possible.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to protect them from the world, right? You
Right.
want to strengthen them and give them optimal
Exactly.
challenges. And, I definitely could have done a better job at doing that. Still working on it.
Point me to the perfect parent, and then I'll criticize you, right?
Yeah.
First stone, whole thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, and it is fascinating about, again, with philosophy, and I'm pulling it back too because I know when we set up the podcast, we're like, yeah, thought experiments. We're like, we're not going to just talk about thought experiments, are we? Like, no, we're going to talk about a lot of different things.
So, sorry, can I jump back real quick?
Yeah, of course.
As I studied philosophy, I, of course, get a sense of what thought experiments are, why I think they're useful. So the ability for them to kind of at least give me data to decide things kind of increases. But at the same time, we're studying physical experiments. You study many physical things. Many things in philosophy. And one of the things I realized is that they're also more complicated and not as clean as many people think they are. In other words, we have too much confidence in the physical experiments. Let me give you an example. I wish I had the citation with me. This is not too long ago. This is just a few years ago. They had to throw out thousands upon thousands of case studies, that were prior to this assumed to be completely legitimate and used for all kinds of research, right? They had to throw it out because there were all these experiments. We do experiments on mice and rats all the time, right? Well, it turns out, so they can sense the gender, the sex rather, of the experimenter, and this changes their chemical and physiological reaction to the drugs. And so
that's
essentially, whether it was a female injecting, the mouse, or a male, that changed their physical reaction, and it ruined all kinds of experimental data. But my point here is you can't fully control for all variables. Okay,
Exactly,
it's extremely difficult. And for someone who doesn't look into how those things work, how science works, you might have overconfidence in these even huge studies that are double blind. There's problem with double blind studies. There's all kinds of issues with these things. But anyhow, for example, you're not when you do an experiment next month, the stars aren't in the same place. That might seem crazy to some people,
Yeah,
but literally the world has changed. It's a different time and place. And like, there are subtle, complex things we don't fully understand. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
exactly.
so, yeah.
True. You know, if it depends, and what if the experimenter, you know, is a Pisces and, you know, the other one's a Libra, like, you know, that might.
Right. I mean, yeah. So
that is the one thing. You're about to, okay, yeah, go ahead.
That wasn't fair. No, go ahead. But I use that example.
Right,
I use that example to show like that no one. So I don't believe in astronomy, right? In terms of their predictions.
Well, astrology, you mean?
Astrology. There you go. I don't even know the name.
I want to make sure you don't.
I do believe in astronomy. Stars exist.
Exactly.
The sun exists.
Of course.
No, but astronomy, right? But what's interesting about astronomy is not the actual specific content, which is all BS, but
astrology. I just want to make sure that no one thinks that you think that astrology.
Rum and Coke now is hitting, so.
No. Yeah, of course. But yeah, I say that as a joke because astrology for me is like one of the most worthless things to complicate your life with.
Right, exactly. But of course, science and astrology agree about a couple things, right? Which is that those distant stars that we're talking about do have a constant physical effect on you in the form of their gravity, right?
Exactly.
And that if any particular star, if that didn't exist either prior in the past or if it suddenly stopped existing now, it would also have an effect on you, right? And so these effects are subtle, and we don't actually record essentially the small differences it's making, so we have no idea what kind of differences they're making. But I guess I use a far-fetched example to actually show that anything could be affecting our thought experiments. We can't fully control for everything. Hopefully the position of the stars are not, but if the experiment is sensitive enough, I don't know, man, the gravity might affect it. I don't know.
Yeah. As far as I know, the most sensitive gravity place is like that 2-mile long laser that senses black hole, like is it supernovas or black? I forget what it is.
No idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you don't know?
Cool. Sounds cool.
Oh wait, yeah. So there's this. So the way they sense gravity from like gravity changes like supernovas and black holes and stuff like that is through this sensor that's like 2 miles long. So it's a laser, and the reason why it's so long is because there's a very precise sensor on the other side, I forget. I'm getting this very wrong, but basically the structure of it is that if the laser even wobbles like the smallest amount, the distance is so long that the circumference of that angle. I'm not saying that right. Yeah, the length of that angle.
The magnitude
changes.
Increases the change.
It increases the change so much that we're able to actually measure tiny changes. So it's a very interesting. Like where is that? I don't know where it is, what it's called. I just remember learning about it in some class I was taking.
Leave a comment if you think Luke made that one up.
Fact checking.
Also leave a comment if you know what it is and have more information.
There you go.
Yeah.
Speaking of, so laws of nature. Did someone say that, or did I just think that in my head?
I think you just thought.
I think you thought that in your head.
Well, someone said it.
Well, we're talking about
someone
stars, and we're talking about astrology.
I'm not sure how much time we have left, but one of the issues that comes up in science, right, is how to conceive of laws of nature, right? So how they're normally conceived of is like, okay, there are these things that are always true. Yeah, if you discover the correct law of nature, it's going to tell you, it holds always, right? That's what it means to be a law of nature. There's no exceptions, right?
Right.
But that's an assumption, notice, because as we look at this world evolving and getting more complex and everything keeps evolving, we might want to ask ourselves, do the laws of nature themselves evolve? Right. If the laws of nature themselves evolve, then they are not these immutable truths, right?
Well, I mean, that's like most of like Newtonian physics is completely invalid in quantum mechanics.
Right, exactly.
Like, on a quantum level, it's not true.
But notice
traveling.
Notice the assumption there, though, is that Newtonian physics was not Correct, and the idea is we gained more information. The assumption isn't that actually Newtonian physics was the truth, and the world itself evolved into quantum physics. Which is kind of like, whoa, I'm not. This is kind of like, sorry, there's a guy, Rupert Sheldrake, who believes this. He actually has this whole bit about is the speed of light a constant, and talks about why it might not be a constant.
Every tool we have to measure it says it's a constant.
Well, actually, apparently all the tools we measured it got different things, and we just averaged the number and said it must be this.
By the way, I'm not crazy. It's called the LIGO. It's a Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory.
Luke, our
it's in Washington.
Viewers were supposed to say
it's in
that.
Washington. So it's right by. It's near you.
It's near.
We already
us.
told them to leave a comment, Luke.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to look that up.
I did that for me. I don't care. But remember, I don't care about the
You should've
viewers.
done it
I don't
off
want
air.
them to listen. They should have stopped by now.
If it's your first time, why are you here?
Yeah, no, really, just leave. But exactly. Something like the speed of light. It's measured by our instruments that infallible humans created, right? And I think that's my thing. That's why I always like to focus on the present and like what I can do now. Like even when I'm on this podcast, I'm not really. I'm only slightly worried about like the editing and like making sure it's cohesive. Like all that stuff is just like my host part of me. Like in the future, want to create something good for the people listening.
Yeah.
But honestly, the world could end tomorrow. Like and none of and so like I always like to focus like on the present. Be like, okay, what can I do now? Of course, taking into account the future because I can make the assumption that it will be there. But
it's a fairly safe assumption. It hasn't been.
Wrong yet. And like, what is life without a? I can't live my life. Like, I need to like figure out how to pay rent for next month. Like that kind of thing. So like, but that's why when people get very like deep into that, especially like in like figuring out like the truth from like even just like from whatever methods they use, I'm like, okay, that's great. I want to learn. So I want to get the closest viewpoint to the truth as possible, but also we have to accept that our minds are limited to the fact that we can't understand the entire universe with this thing.
Well, maybe you can't, but I have big goals.
As best we can. At least.
I mean, you did say the goal of this podcast was to understand everything, right?
Well, this
episode, this episode was to understand everything.
I figured we could do it in an hour and a half, honestly.
So my response is this. My wife tells me something that I find very annoying. Okay, she says, "Why do you want to know?" I hate answering the question of why I want to know because I don't want to presuppose how the knowledge is going to be useful. See, there are certain things that it turns out, don't seem useful now, but then later affect your worldview, right?
Oh yeah.
So, I guess that's my interest in the sort of details and esoteric.
So why isn't that just your answer then? Why wasn't your answer to why do you want to know just like I don't know when or where or why it might be
because
useful?
she hates when I go philosopher mode. That's why.
Okay, so there's not a philosophical level. There's a relationship level into this, a human level in this, which is admirable because we all live together. We need to figure out each other. But I think I definitely see that, and because you never know. Like I spent the last 7 years, like my whole professional career, learning everything in all the fields I'm in, because and I don't know. Like someone might ask, like podcasting. I learned everything about it, and it's one of the things I teach people the most is just how to actually start a podcast and like what you need and how to properly do it. And
you should teach me at some point.
I have.
Yeah, that's actually an extremely valuable skill. This is my first podcast ever.
Oh wait, really?
I'm only a parent. Yeah.
Woo! I should have got like little like balloons or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been exciting because here in Texas you can actually buy balloons.
Well, see, my point there is like Luke runs this. Like he puts this all together, and I show up.
I mean,
there you go.
You bring the
but
knowledge.
at some point, if I ever start my own show,
let's be fair.
Right. At some point, if I ever start my own show, I'm gonna be calling Luke and be like, "Hey, help me set this up."
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that he might just do it for me because he'd enjoy it.
I would enjoy it. And that's the thing. So like, and that's to bring it like, and that brings it to a professional level, like a brand level, going exactly what Devin just said. Is that everybody who knows me knows that if they're trying to do something, I was just talking to a teenage friend of mine, who's trying to get into like LinkedIn. and trying to deal with school. And I was the person that she turned to. Why? Because I've made it my mission to learn all of that and to let everyone know that I know that stuff.
That's awesome.
So exactly like Devin says. And that's why I think that when it comes to philosophy, I think that's valuable in knowing things, because when people have questions, then they can turn to you because they know that you know how to answer and talk through questions.
Well, the funny thing, though, is
definitely.
when you ask a philosopher a question, you don't get an answer.
Well,
That's
and
true.
but that's not
If
exactly
the question
a
was good
problem.
enough, right?
Well, exactly. If the question's good enough, you don't give them an answer. You say, "Here, let's talk
Well,
about
there isn't
this."
one.
Exactly, and you need to come to your own conclusion.
Right.
I'm not going
and
to.
you walk away more confused, and you're like, man.
Right. I mean, that's
don't
the
know.
reason. So like, why now that I know you, Dean, right, and I know you like on a level of we've had a 2-hour conversation now. Now that I know you, right, and especially through Devin, whether we have you on the podcast again or like however I ask you, I know that if I have a question, then you're someone who I know that I can be like, oh. I wonder what Dean's perspective is on this, because you actually.
He doesn't have time for you.
I'm saying if we get you on this podcast, but like as an example, right? As an example, that's why I think that asking those questions is necessary, is because I believe that each one of them will be useful in some way, whether you're using that to inform another idea and another question, or you're using it directly to help yourself or someone else. I don't think there's any downside to actually asking questions and learning things.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Dean, did we do it?
Did we do what?
Did we prove that science is a religion?
I did not realize that was the goal of this episode.
I would say
Well, no. What was your topic? You said
Yeah, right.
it's just the relationship between
So-
science
The
and religion,
relationship,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I would conclude that they're more like each other than we thought. Right.
Okay.
They both play this world shaping view in people's lives to answer deep questions about where we come from, where we're going. I think that they both kind of have this claim to knowledge. It's really interesting to see for me how they're actually more similar than apart. Obviously, their methodologies differ, and I think religion is less about methodology. I'm not defending any kind of religious methodology because I don't know what that would mean. But I do think that there's plenty of, things to consider outside of just strict empirical science. And if we're kind of throwing that into the hat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, a lot of philosophers and early scientists were all believers in God. And so there's not, I don't see a contradiction there. I guess that's part of it. A lot of this is a cultural war too, right? I mean, I was always taught, I was like, when I was a teenager in early adulthood, it was like, oh man, look at this debate between evolution and creation. And I found it really interesting, but who framed it as a debate between evolution and creation? Because obviously they're not in competition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once you look at it, and it's like, evolution's awesome. And it tells us how things change once they're already here. You know what I mean? Creation is a completely different thing. It's a claim about how things got here.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is cultural. That's why I'm curious about how like all these different things. I'm curious to see how it's talked about and thought about, even within different parts of America. Like, because if you grow up in the Bible Belt, like I was just listening to a podcast of someone. They're talking about religion and like how
Was it us?
What? No. And they're talking about their whole journey in faith and how they grew up in the Bible Belt, and that was very interesting to me because I didn't grow up that. I grew up in California and San Diego, so it's a completely different experience and cultural beliefs and all these different things. And even talking to Devin too, we were just talking about your beliefs, and I was stunned. I was like, wait, what? I've never heard that before. That's very interesting. That's like I want to like absorb that. I want to know why you think this way, because I've never heard this belief and these arguments for that belief before. So that's why I'm fascinated about talking with people, especially that's why I love having a podcast and why I've been doing it for so long. Is that I love
All 5 episodes.
I mean, okay, my personal podcast is that I absolutely love hearing other people's perspectives and hearing like why you think the way you think, not necessarily even believe, but why you think the way you think, because to me I think that forms everything, and it's just fascinating. But Devin, would you say that we have overthought this?
I don't even know what we've overthought, but we've overthought.
I was giving you the line. You know.
I used it.
I know exactly. Yeah, I know. I was. It
I
gets
have
a point
to
where I'm
disagree. I have to disagree. 2 hours is not enough time to overthink this subject.
Yeah, I agree too.
I still have a lot more to say.
So
but-
Dean, we have this running bit when we're
done
with an idea for the
Yeah.
day. We end it by saying, "All right, we've overthought."
I could
this
tell.
one. Let's move on."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I think it is. I think for the sake of the listener, I think this is a good place to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
solid. I think it was a solid 2 hours. I absolutely loved meeting you and talking with you, Dean. I love having. I love meeting people with different perspectives and especially you have a background, you know, in so many different things, philosophy, political science, you know, I believe you said economics too, like a little, you say political economics?
No,
Whatever, you know.
political science, but in philosophy, my specialty in graduate school is normative ethical theory.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. Yeah.
But
So,
actually, as an undergrad, I went the most generalist route you could do, which is like I stayed an additional year and completed 4 different areas of focus. So I tried to have a broad ranging view in terms of
which is
of
great.
philosophy.
And that makes you very, very interesting to talk with. But thank you. You can find.
Do we want to do plugs?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Dean, do you want people to find you? Not necessarily where you live.
Oh shoot!
Don't go to his house.
Not.
If not, yeah. Do you have?
So if you have any questions for Dean, ask me.
I'm not a
and
big
I'll ask
social
Dean.
media person actually.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot of online presence. So for now,
Respectable.
I will remain just Dean Tracy.
Exactly. Okay, Justine Tracy. Then, if you have questions, we can we'll ask Devin. But you can email the show with questions. We can relate them to you and maybe bring you back on with questions to overthinkingpodcastshow@gmail.com. That's the email right now. It might redirect to something later once we figure all that out. But for right now, that's where we're at, and we're not going further. Overthinkingpodcast.com is where you can find the episodes and links to everything and the show notes, which Devin has. I will say, at this point in time of recording, Devin has not finally, I would say, I was behind all the episodes. Devin got show notes to me because I finally finished the first episode, and I will say they are the best show notes I've ever read in my entire life. I wouldn't say they're the most valuable. I say they're the best, though. No, truly, I laughed out loud reading them. I got information on them. They're time stamped, so you can find what we're talking about, different quotes of what we're saying and stuff like that. You have your work cut out for you on this one. I do not envy you. Also, I have to edit this. So.
This one's gonna have a single show note. It's gonna be "Welcome to the mic, Dean Tracy."
Exactly. But again, I want to thank you so much, Dean, for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. We're both very appreciative. I know I am. I assume Devin is. And hopefully, in the future, talk to Devin about different ideas and stuff about coming back on. I'm sure we'd love to have you.
Yeah,
I'd
it's
love
been
to listen
great.
to you again.
It's been great. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Devin. And I'd love to come back on anytime.
Awesome. Cool. That's great. And we still don't have an outro.
We don't have an outro.